It's your league to dominate in EA Sports Madden NFL 27. Powered by the all-new Persona engine, you can build your franchise the way you want. And to really live your entire football journey, get the MVP bundle. It comes with access to College Football 27, Madden NFL 27, plus deluxe edition rewards in both games. From campus legend to NFL superstar, make your rise with the MVP bundle. Learn more at EA.com. Rated E for everyone with mild lyrics, user interact, and in-game purchases includes random items.
Yeah, cool!
A Lego set is a gift that always clicks. And clicks.
The end of the final lap, and we've got a champion.
And clicks. For kids who love everything on wheels, choose a Lego set. A gift that always clicks.
Choice Hotels get you more of what you value. Comfort Inn, it's calling your name. Save on the stay. Oh, and free waffles are yours to claim. Book direct at choicehotels.com.
Hello everyone, I'm Chris Wynn and welcome to Haway the podcast. And I have to start off this podcast with a little apology because it's been such a busy summer doing a few other bits and pieces that we've done, like interviews and room 101s and catching up on the games and transfers and all of that sort of jazz. It went under the radar that it's gone a few weeks without doing a Q&A. So we put the call out, and once again, you lovely people have responded with some absolute belters. So I want to get straight into them as quickly as possible because we have got a long list to get through. But before I can do that, I need to introduce two fellas who will have all the answers to those questions. And first up is Bomber. Hello, mate.
Hello, Chris. Hello, everybody. Disclaimer, I do not claim to have all the answers, but I am more than happy to BS my way through anything that I'm not quite sure of and be opinionated on anything else. So, yeah. Hello.
Yes. Yes, Bomber, you have all the answers, but not necessarily to the questions that we're going to have today.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that'll do us. But and next up to answer all your questions, we have Johnny Hawley. Hello, Johnny.
Hello, Chris, and hello, Bomber, and hello, everyone else.
Yes, it is. It is the season, isn't it? In the summer, mate, and we've had lots of other stuff, but it's nice to get into answering some questions, and actually, because half of these do make you think of stuff that. That's just gone under the radar or that's just been lost because we've actually been playing a few games.
Yeah, and speaking of us playing a few games as well, I actually managed to watch the Leeds game in full, which is the first pre-season game I've actually sat down and watched any of. So for me as well, it especially feels like we're finally kicking back into actual football gear and we've got a proper season to look forward to. And it's starting to feel like it's really happening, which is nice after it's like a weird limbo after a major tournament summer, I always think. You've kind of got that hangover from whatever England have depressed you with. And, you're weirdly footballed out for a bit. Whereas, an off summer, I just spend the entire time counting down the days till Sunderland's back. So, it feels like we're back now. So let's get into it.
Whoa. On a football podcast that goes every day, we're definitely not footballed out over there.
Kick him off.
Hey, I said almost footballed out. Don't worry.
I had to pull you up on that. But I see Bomber there looking absolutely gorgeous in the pink away strip. And we've now got the home strip out, Bomber. And another belter. They've knocked it out of the park, haven't they? 1937 inspired. And I've actually got that Toffs 1937 one. And I'm not a person who tends to get strips, but if I was to get one, it would be this home one, I reckon.
Oh, mate, I'm exactly the same. So I could probably, in the last 15 years, I could probably count on one hand the number of Sunderland tops that I've bought, partly because, we've been shite for the best part of the last 15 years, but also, like, there's a mixture of, I feel like I'm a grown adult and don't necessarily need to buy football shirts anymore. The other 50% of me is like, well, some of those kits in the last 15 years have been absolutely horrendous, so why would I want to part my money with them? But I just seem to revert. The last 2 seasons, I've just reverted back, or 3 seasons, in fact, going back to the white and green away strip that we had Championship season. Yeah. I think I've probably bought 246. I am getting the new home strip, and that'll be the 7th shirt that I've bought in the last 3 seasons, I think, maybe 4 seasons. And like I said, considering the 15 years prior, I could count on one hand the number of Sunderland shirts that I bought. This is how far back it goes. I think the last one that I bought was a Daffabet one, home shirt.
Bloody hell.
Yeah, that was the last one that I bought. So yeah, I will be investing, but it's just lush, isn't it? I wasn't sure of the pink one, and then I saw it live, and I was like, "Yep, I'm having that." So I got that. But there's no doubt in my mind that how good the new home strip is. It went straight in my basket, so to speak.
Yeah, and you've just reminded me about the Daffabet Cup, which is a lovely, lovely memory, isn't it? All the way back to that. Well, I suppose you could say that's where kind of the journey started in some ways.
Yeah.
It makes it feel all the sweeter that we went through the Daffabet Cup.
Yeah.
That we end up where we are now. But Johnny, we've had 2 games, and we've had one in the lovely Elvis kit that Bummer is styling today, and we had one in the home kit, of course, against Leeds, and it was nice actually. I thought to play Leeds in our home kit because obviously it looked like 73 on the pitch, didn't it? With them all in white and us in 73, so I thought that worked. But again, even the launches in the States, Kevin Phillips, Kevin Ball, all of the activities are put on there. The launch of the new kit in, I want to say New York. The game was in New Jersey, I think. The kit launch was in New York. I think I've got that right. Might have got that wrong. But yeah, all these events have looked fantastic. And on the commercial side, the club are just smashing it every single time, haven't they?
Oh, it's been a masterclass, hasn't it? And it seems like they've only got better and better over the last few seasons. As you say, obviously they've branched out into these kind of, American-centric events that they've been putting on alongside the kit launches and that, which, it's not like that's going to harm anything locally, is it? So let them crack on and expand that as much as they want, as far as I'm concerned. It's only more eyeballs on us and hopefully a bit more money in the club's pocket. So, yeah, and obviously, all the stuff with the home kit launch, the players modelling in the flat caps and the old tweed jackets and all that. Nick Barnes would have been right at home, wouldn't he? He should have got himself along to that particular launch.
He should have been involved in the campaign.
Yeah, exactly. Get him front and centre, I say. Yeah. But yeah, all that stuff and the little commemorative cards with the little portraits of the players on and all that. It's just the little things, isn't it, that makes you appreciate that they've actually put some proper effort in and genuinely trying to, push every aspect of the club onwards, because these are the kind of things nobody was thinking about 5-10 years ago. I think it's a sign of good health, isn't it, in the club? When these things are getting taken care of, that there's the serious ambition and just care behind the scenes, actual care about what they're putting out. So long may it continue. And if the kits keep being as gorgeous as this, they can do what they want when they release it, and people are going to eat them up, aren't they?
Yeah. Let's not forget. Let's not just exclude that. And let's not just like ban that to the kits as well. Some of the training wear and the kind of fashion wear, I guess. With the varsity jackets and things like that. They're all of those. People are going to be spending hundreds and hundreds of pounds, and justifiably so, because it's not. It's the opposite of tat. Do you know what I mean? Every piece of merch that we put out at the moment is something that I want, and unfortunately I haven't got an endless bank account to be able to get it, so I have to limit myself to the shirts. But yeah, everything that we put out at the moment is golden.
Yeah, and the genius of those events in New York and things like that are the few, because people over there have been saying that like the locals have been going nuts for some of this stuff. So if they walk in and there's a nice shirt to buy, they buy the shirt, and then actually some of them are actually the following Sunderland. Do they come across for a game in the future? Do they come across and spend a fortune in the shop? So it's kind of, this is how to build a club. And I will say it comes a long way since we had to put kind of stickers over our sponsors. But one thing that Rob Hutchison has noted in our first question, I'm going to put this to you first, Johnny. He's asking, are we struggling to attract an appropriate shared sponsor or shirt sponsor even, who will pay what we are looking for? Would 2 kit launches without a sponsor indicate we may have to settle for a lower value shirt contract in the end. But I can't say I've heard too much about what's going to happen with the shirt sponsor. And I think the market has become smaller with betting companies and things like that not able to do it and the rules changing. But what do you make of all that?
I'm not worried about it in the slightest, to be honest. I think it's a bit of a weird summer for sponsorships because, like you say, the gambling sponsorships have finally gone, which means there's not just us, there's quite a few different Premier League clubs who are all looking around for sponsors at the same time. So that complicates things because you've presumably got at least some of those clubs having conversations with some of the same sponsors. And it's, certain sponsors may only have the money to invest in one partnership at a time. So then, you've maybe got to wait for other pieces of the jigsaw to fall into place before we can make our move. So it's just behind the scenes kind of financial posturing, I would imagine at this stage. And I can't remember whether this has been explicitly confirmed, but I'm pretty sure that multiple sources have said that we will have a shirt sponsor during the season and that they've gone ahead with releasing the kits anyway because, they need to release the kits. They can't just hold them back till we've got a sponsor. And also, I think they've definitely confirmed that we'll be able to buy sponsorless versions of both the kits that have come out so far. And I think that in itself is a bit of a marketing stroke of genius because we all know that football fans hate a lot of sponsors. How many times we've seen a nice kit ruined. I mean, you don't have to look any further than Bournemouth's home shirt this season to see a particularly egregious example of that, or Watford's in the Championship. So I think the club have just probably looked at it and gone, look, we could rush into a sponsorship deal early and possibly lose a bit of money or, whatever. It's not something that they particularly want, doesn't look nice on the kits, and lose a load of goodwill with people. Or just crack on, announce the sponsor when it's actually ready, give themselves a bit of extra breathing room. And yeah, for me, I think it's probably as much of a decision on the club's behalf to take it a bit more slowly and consider it a bit more. So I wouldn't be particularly worried about that. And in terms of leaving money on the table, we've never been more investable, have we? We're finally on the up. We're in Europe. There's lots of eyes on us for lots of different reasons. I think we're probably in quite a strong position for a sponsorship negotiation myself, but that's obviously the caveat that I have absolutely no idea how business is conducted behind the scenes at elite Premier League clubs. So take what I've said with a pinch of salt, but yeah, I wouldn't be worried about it.
Yeah, just to get your 2 pence on that, Bomber, because obviously you're wearing a shirt without the sponsor, and I'm just wondering, and again, I don't know the finances behind all of these things, but there is a small chance, I suppose, that we sell more kits because it hasn't got a sponsor on potentially, because the kits look absolutely stunning. Yeah. Stick a sponsor on there, as Johnny said, there's probably more chance of it, spoiling the kit than there is enhancing the kit. I think only go back to maybe Lampton's with the Asics one that I liked, Scorpion Lager, maybe the one before that. Can't remember too many where I thought the sponsor went with a kit. But yeah, if as long as we get that deal in the end, and I think, like I said, we've probably sold a lot more kits because it hasn't had a sponsor. We'll do all right, won't we?
Yeah, it'll be absolutely fine, mate. It's I don't think today's footballing society relies quite as heavily on shirt sponsors as the early Premier League days. It's more about whether the design, the logo of the sponsor fits the shirt, like you said. And we've probably sold more shirts for the fact that it hasn't got a logo on there. And then fans obviously have the option when we do get something through the door to either have it put on or not have it on. But I just remember in previous seasons, in the not too distant past, shirts have come out with sponsors on, and you just get flooded on Instagram or on X or whatever with, can we buy a sponsorless version? Is there a sponsorless version available? So, maybe the club have done something in listening to that, and maybe there is a sponsor lined up, but they just want to have the first wave of rush of these shirt sales to go out sponsorless to give people the option afterwards. But like I said, I don't hold much stock in shirt sponsors, and that might be me being naive from a business point of view. But I just think back to like the early in the mid 90s, the early years of the Premier League, where you had the Carlsberg sponsoring Liverpool, and it was the very elite brands from the world And the only one really that you can say that to now, off the top of my head, is Etihad Airways. You know, they're the only really like top global superstar brand that I can think of anyway that are in the shirt sponsoring game, so to speak. Because nowadays I've not heard of 80% of the sponsors that go on the front of a shirt. And with whereas before, like you think to Arsenal, you had JVC and then Sega and things. I just think of those like massive brands and those household names, and they just don't exist anymore because those companies don't need to invest in football shirt marketing anymore. So it's left then to the energy drinks companies and the betting companies, which are like more synonymous, I guess, with football culture. So yeah, I don't pay it much mind. I wouldn't be that bothered, to be honest, Chris, if we went the whole season without a sponsor, unless it meant that we missed out on something in the transfer market because it was 20 million over 3 seasons that we didn't have. Barca managed it pretty well. I think they were the first ones to do it, to just go sponsorless for a season. Or didn't they donate it? They donated it to UNICEF or something, didn't they?
UNICEF, yeah, I was going to say.
Yeah. But yeah, I don't pay it much mind, mate. As long as when the decision is made and it's released, I care more about it looking nice on the shirt than the finances behind it. But maybe that's just the fan in me. But yeah, we'll see. It's a wait and see game, isn't it?
Yeah, that's it. Well, look, again, I don't want to have people get in touch and say that we focus too much on the mags, but the next couple of questions are focused on the mags. So we answer all the questions that come in. I see Johnny rubbing his hands together. So
just giving the people what they want, mate.
Yeah, exactly. Absolutely. So we'll start off on them before we get back into all the Sunderland stuff. The first one, Alex Wilborn asks, he says, hang on, what is he? He said, will the 6 points from the mags now be easy now that Eddie Howe has left and is rumoured to replace by, I want to say, Matthias Yassel? I'm not sure if I've pronounced that completely.
I'm not going to correct you.
I haven't got a clue who he is, to be honest. I've seen that he's been linked. That's about all I know that I've tried to pronounce his name. Alex Wilborn said he's been coaching in Saudi Arabia since 2023. The player and personnel exodus has been hilarious to see all summer. FTM. Now, there is, I suppose, looking up the road was big story that Eddie Howe left, of course, Johnny. But it is an odd one how all the players left and then Eddie Howe's left, and it's one. But I have to admit, I'm seeing all this news when Eddie Howe came through. Maybe once upon a time, let's say if we were in League One, I might have been more excited about it. I had a bit of a shrug of the shoulders because they're kind of irrelevant to me now. I don't know what you think, Johnny.
I think that's a brave face, but I can't pretend that I'm not absolutely buzzing about it.
Just in case, I'm not saying like about the rivalry in general, but just in terms of
in terms of where the two teams are rather than the clubs.
Just the route they've gone down. That I see them as they've completely changed from the Newcastle United that I used to hate. Let's just put it that way. Now I hate them more for different reasons. Now it's not just necessarily the local. It's how they're run and who they're run by and things like that. So there's that different element to it. But now we're up there and it's like we're doing our thing. I'm more focused on what we're doing. And it's almost just a little, it's almost like, people are saying they're hearing the questions. It's like a little wave to them and, a little bit of a chuckle. But then you get back to what we're doing because it's so exciting.
Yeah, I do agree, to be fair. I think it's a lot more important to grasp onto your rival's suffering when you're not succeeding as well, because if you've not really got loads to shout about yourself, you need something to be happy about. So if they're going through the ringer, then obviously it'd be 90% of your waking thoughts would probably be occupied by trying to laugh at them lot at the minute. But because we're actually quite good and we're going into a European season and what have you, I do agree that I'm more happy about Sunderland than I am bothered about them. It's just like a bit of nice icing on the cake rather than being the main course, you know what I mean, this summer. But all of that being said, I am still absolutely reveling in every single second of this because it's the most predictable culmination of their situation in the world. Like, we've all been saying this at this point for years. You know, you're not as big of a club as you think you are. You're not the pull that you think you've got. You're not going to be able to break your way consistently into being a Champions League team. Certainly not this quickly. And eventually, you're going to hit the glass ceiling. And if you don't accept that you're a stepping stone club and behave appropriately and recruit accordingly, it's going to come crumbling down. And lo and behold, look what's happened. They've had a few good seasons, fair enough, but then they've hit the glass ceiling, and Isak's gone, and Gordon's gone, and Bruno's gone, and Tonali's gone, and oh God, it feels good listing them all off. But you know, if they'd behaved like a sensible club for the previous 3 seasons, they'd already have some of these younger players through the door, and they'd have been grooming them, and they'd have been making contingency plans for all this, rather than allowing it all to implode around their ears immediately in one summer. Basically, if you know, Isak was last summer, fair enough, but the bulk of the damage has been done.
Well, Elliot Anderson.
Summer. And Elliot Anderson's a perfect example of that. The short-termist thinking that's infested them since the Saudi takeover, you know, when they were promised, oh, we're going to be challenging for the league in 5 years and we're going to be in a 100,000-seat cathedral stadium or whatever other nonsense they were promised. This was always going to happen. And I think, to give them some credit, there was sensible Newcastle supporters and, you know, a few of them, very few. But I think, you know, there were some of them who could also see this coming and who were not happy with the way that they were being run, because this was, you know, you didn't have to be a genius to see this coming. You just had to look around at what happens to every other club of the same or similar position. We all get pecked apart by the vultures at the top of the food chain eventually. You know, it'll happen to us at some point as well, where we will lose a Noah Siddiqui, we'll lose a Robin Roofs, we'll lose whoever. But because we've accepted that and built our strategy around it, we're able to cope. They have not done that. And that's why I think this summer it is happening so quickly, because when you've not put the foundations in place, it only takes 1 or 2 of those kind of dominoes to fall, and then the rest starts going. So yeah, I think they deserve it. You know, they deserve it for the way that they've carried on over the past few years. The arrogance of the fan base as a whole. Again, there's decent ones, but I think by and large, they've drank the Kool-Aid from the ownership, and now the chickens are coming home to roost, and they're starting to realise, like, maybe those Sunderland and Villa and Brighton and Bournemouth and Crystal Palace fans, maybe they did know what they were talking about, and maybe we were wrong. So we'll see. It's not too late for them to change tack and save themselves, but I think it's going to be it could be a successful season for them if their new signings gel extremely quickly. But I think we're in for a season of recalibration for Newcastle, shall we say?
Yeah. Well,
Chris, can I add a question to the Q&A? How many cliches will Johnny spout out before the end of this record? Talking about counting chickens and drinking Kool-Aid.
He said we've got to give the people what they want from us. So
yeah. Well, as Alan Shearer and Micah Richards keep saying, it's a game of 2 halves and all that sort of stuff, and he'll be disappointed with that. Well, yeah, I mean, look, going up at the Mags, as soon as they started chanting that Messi was cleaning the boots, you just knew how all of this was going to end. But Bomber, just on the similar theme, but to turn it to us, Billy Blythe asks, he says, given the developments up the road, is it time to step on their throats and be top dog for the foreseeable future? Now, with this, Bomber, I'd like us to be, but at the same time, I don't want anything like that to get in the way of us overstepping, because I think we're building really nicely. And what Johnny just described there as the Mags not building nicely, I think from the word go when Kieran Louis-Jeffers came in, he's built the foundations up, and I don't want us to run before we can walk. And the club owners, I think, know better than any of us whether not to rush all this, don't they?
Yeah. I think the sensible answer to that question is just concentrate on Sunderland and don't really worry about what they're doing at all. I don't, the notion of like standing on their throats and asserting dominance we kind of did that last season anyway. We finished above them. We beat them twice. So I think that's already
Got the
mission.
T-shirt done.
Yeah, I think that's already mission accomplished, to be honest. It's quite a short answer. But yeah, I don't think anybody at the club, us as fans, obviously with our adoration of Sunderland and our hatred of Newcastle, love to see us on top of them and all over them, etc. I don't think the club are thinking that. I don't think the club are making any plans to say, okay, well, how do we make sure we finish above Newcastle next season? You know, with all due respect, we're bigger than that, I guess, from a moral perspective, and in terms of our vision, we're not going into a season going, how can we beat Newcastle? We're going into a season saying, how can we improve on what we're doing, what we did last season? And if that includes beating Newcastle twice again, then so be it. I just think we're almost at a stage now, given what's happening to Newcastle and losing Eddie Howe and losing all essentially the finest players. They're in trouble unless they pull some sort of a few rabbits out of their hats. They'll be in trouble next season. You just have to think of how competitive that league was last year. For anyone from fourth right the way down to about 15th could have ended up qualifying for Europe before the last 6 games of the season. It's going to be really competitive. Every other team will be strengthening or looking to strengthen, and from what I can see, the only team that are truly going backwards is them. So I don't think we need to worry about them at all. It'll be their demise that stamps our dominance over them, not us doing better than what we did last season. So I just don't think we think about them at all, other than the week leading up to match day, and we'll do just fine.
Yeah, well, yeah, like I say, I'm like Lynn Shackleton, not biased against Newcastle. I don't care who beats them. But just on a similar thing linked to the developments up the road, Johnny, JD asks, what would your reaction have been if somebody told you that 2.5 years ago, that in the summer of 2026, Sunderland will have the 4th longest serving manager in the Premier League? Now after a few managers of having next to no time at Sunderland, you probably would have questioned that, wouldn't you?
It's not the top of the list of things that this would apply to, but it's one of those where I definitely would have had the men with the white coats coming to take you away and put you in one of the nice, safe, padded rooms so you can't do any more damage to yourself. Because, yeah, what a ridiculous statement. Sunderland are one of the most settled clubs in the country with one of the longest serving managers, and yeah, it's not the Sunderland I grew up with and got used to. I can certainly say that. I think obviously it's a good sign, right? I think it's an important thing for us to finally almost psychologically get over as a fan base and a club, to be able to put to bed that horrific run. I mean, I haven't got the numbers to hand, but that run of managers we had that didn't even complete a full season, opening day to final day. For a while, we had a lot of those in the Premier League, particularly towards the latter end. Once we started on the merry-go-round of, O'Neill to Poyet to O'Neill to Di Canio to Poyet to Advocat and blah blah blah. All of those were very short-lived. And then even in League One, I think Jack Ross saw out a full season. Maybe Parkinson did, but just listen to the names that I'm saying. That's not a good thing if they did see out full seasons. And so for a long, long, long time, stretching back to, either of Roy Keane or Steve Bruce, you'd probably say, were 2 of the last managers we had that genuinely had a couple of settled seasons and managed to get the feet under the table a little bit and stamp anything close to an identity onto the club. And then obviously Mowbray had a very good season, but even he, fell off a cliff pretty quickly after that first season back in the Championship. So yeah. All that being said, I think Labris he's very much broken the mould of a Sunderland manager, which is really important. And it's good for us to get used to having a settled manager again. It's obviously we as supporters can't influence that much directly, but I do think it can tell quite quickly if things go wrong in the form department and you're just used to chopping and changing all the time. that's where your head goes, isn't it? You know, it sets in and it takes root, and it becomes difficult to break that cycle. You know, look at Chelsea. Even though they changed from Abramovich completely to Blueco or whatever we're calling them now, they still were sacking managers like they were going out of fashion. And I think that is, it's a vicious cycle you can get into, and it's important that we got out of it, because you can't progress and you can't go anywhere if you constantly, you know, having a manager come in and he gets 12 to 18 months and then he's gone and then the next fella's in and so on and so forth. So yeah, it's excellent news for us, and it's particularly good in the context of this season where so many other long-serving managers have gone. I think Michael Carrick's now one of the longest-serving managers in the Premier League. He's already been in post since December-ish, something like that. So yeah, it's a ludicrous landscape, and you know, Pep's gone, Jurgen Klopp's not here anymore, and all of those managers you would normally look to and be like, oh yeah, he's still around. You know, we know it's a Premier League because Pep's still there or whatever. A lot of that is gone, so it puts us in bit of an advantageous position, I think, this season, where we have got that stability, and a lot of other clubs who will be in direct competition with Crystal Palace, Nottingham Forest, you know, Fulham, these kind of clubs who will be there or thereabouts with us, you'd imagine. They're starting from scratch, really, and we're not. So yeah, it's good stuff, and I think, you know, the longer Lebris stays, the better it's going to be for us, because, you know, I think he's a special talent.
Yeah, I think somebody would have had to have offered me pretty long odds if somebody had said put money on Lebris the day he was appointed on, you know, being the fourth longest serving manager in the Premier League 2.5 years later.
Even before that, imagine saying the day McBeal got sacked, oh, by the way, your next gaffer is going to end up being the fourth longest serving in England. And
you haven't heard of him. Yeah, I think someone would have had Leicester City type odds for me to place some money on that. But anyway, just before we move on to the topic of Europe and the transfer window, which are obviously big topics at the moment, I think we'll take a quick break. So we'll be back very soon. And welcome back to Haway, the podcast. And we're just about to get into this topic of Europe, because, of course, the draw will be coming up in Europe. So we've had a few questions sent in to us about that. And I'll start with you, Bomber, on this topic, because Jack Asprey has sent in I suppose the hot topic, because he's asked, what would be your ideal Europa League run when the draw is made in August? Now, I have to admit, I've been a little bit rubbish because, for a start, I'm not quite sure it's sunk in properly, that Europa League, but I haven't done my research on all the pots and all that sort of stuff, so I'm not sure of all the possibilities and what can be possible with all of the rules they put on what can be put in each pot and all of that sort of business. I don't know if you've got a few teams in mind to answer Jack's question.
Yeah. So I would really, really like to see us come up against one of the big Italian teams, the Juves, the AC Milans of the world. I think a home tie against Juventus or a home tie against AC Milan, that would be pinnacle for me. Obviously, it's difficult to say any others because they're still going through the qualifying stages now. The third qualifying rounds are still being played. So, you know, I could say other people, and then they'll end up falling by the wayside in terms of qualifying. But how many games did we play in the league? Is it 7 games that you play, or is it 8? It's 8, 4 home, 4 away, isn't it?
8, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah. So I think if we can get a couple of the elite teams, so if we can have a Juve and a Milan, and then play like a Leverkusen, someone like that, and then a couple of like teams that, for all intents and purposes, will turn over, so that we can at least qualify for the knockout stages. One of the Scottish teams would be quite good. An away trip up to Rangers or to Hearts or someone like that would be nice. Not that, you know, I would only dream of getting tickets for such a game, but I'd like to see that.
Because every time Celtic and Rangers have come to Sunderland, it's always gone well, hasn't it?
Well, yeah. we'll go there instead. It's fine.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think dream would be a Juve or a AC Milan at home. The rest, give me a couple of decent, like, you know, a Bruges away, because, you know, everyone would love a trip to Bruges, or Split away, a nice little holiday in Croatia. That'd be nice. But yeah, I think in terms of ties, you can't look past. I'm sure everybody agrees. You can't look past Juve and AC Milan at the Stadium of Light. That's the pinnacle, I think.
Yeah. Well, I think
I can think of a couple of guys who wouldn't fancy a trip to Bruges, but oh, Chris, I'm disappointed in you.
Has that gone over my head? Has it?
Brendan Gleeson, Colin Farrell in Bruges.
Yeah, well, I was thinking players. Rather than talking about footy. Yeah, of course the film, but
it's a football podcast, mate.
Yeah,
mind you, just on what the last thing you said.
I'm thinking of a couple of the players getting into bother in Bruges before. I was like, hang on, have I missed something?
No, we don't have Catmull and Benter these days, man. No, Bomber, you said we all want Juve or Milan at home. Juve at home, yes, but I think we all want Milan away, don't we?
Well, actually, just before you answer that, because Ed Met has asked the question, I'll put this one to you, actually, Johnny, because you've already mentioned that. He said, from the teams that we know that are in the other Europa pots, which 4 away matches do you fancy? And he said, take into account the stadium, the city, the stadium, and how rough the place is.
Yeah, that last one's quite important, isn't it? I want Milan away. I don't actually care whether it's in the league phase or the knockout rounds, presuming that we get there. I want that one ticked off. I think we all do. Beyond that, yeah, a Bruges or somebody like that, a trip to Belgium would be nice. I wouldn't mind also another slightly nicer destination. So maybe somewhere in Portugal or, as I said, like Milan away would be ideal or somewhere like that. And I want a proper hovel somewhere, like just the most far-flung corner
of Kazakhstan.
Yeah, exactly. The most far-flung corner of Eastern Europe where, you've got to travel for 17 hours to get there, but you rock up and pints of 10 pence and people
I've got the team for you, Johnny. Karabag away. That's the one.
Give me Karabag away. Come on, give me Karabag away. Or, a bit of a cliche, but Slavia Prague, the trip to Prague, you can't go wrong with a couple of days away there, can you? But yeah, I would. The only one that I would say I don't want is in direct opposition to Bomber. I can't be arsed with a Scottish trip. It is a European trip, but it's not really, is it? You know what I mean? Yeah, exactly. Like we played Hearts last pre-season. I can't be bothered playing them in European competition.
I know what you mean. I'm just thinking I guess I was thinking more broadly in terms of those 8 games. Those 8 games, if we can have a couple of big hitters, then like a proper like British clash, and then your Karabags, your Bruges, your Benficas. If we can have that, would be my ideal mix.
Yeah, you two are only saying that. You two are only saying that because you're scarred from doing the heart of home straight after the game.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah,
yeah. I never want to talk about Sunderland playing them ever again. Actually, but I will give you that one. Actually, Bomber. I think like a home game against the Scottish opposition, I wouldn't mind that because it would probably be a really good atmosphere, wouldn't it? And
yeah,
they'd get plenty down.
Yeah, and yes, so that will be interesting, that draw. And actually, I wonder if the EU might want to change the terms of the United Kingdom's agreement when you've got tens of thousands of Sunderland fans travelling right across Europe.
Yeah, what's the Italian equivalent of Trafalgar Square?
Yeah, exactly. They're going to put a limit on how many people can enter Europe, the EU, from the UK after
10,000 Sunderland fans in the Trevi Fountain.
Yeah.
Instead of checking your passport, they check your purchase history, and if you've ever purchased from fanatics.com and it's rocked up with Sunderland badge on, that's it, you're denied a visa.
Yeah, and you have to have a York City ticket.
Was it the Walsall voucher or something?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah,
that's the one. Yes, so Johnny, actually, I'm going to put this next one to you because your footy manager background will know more than me. We've got a question from LD. He's talking about the UEFA squad, and he says that we are close to, or at very least, or we passed, or at very least close to the maximum foreign player numbers allowed in the squad. Do we have to consider who misses out on the squad? Now, I genuinely don't know the numbers or anything like that. I haven't played footy manager for a long time. Haven't taken notice of, funnily enough, haven't taken notice of the limits in the Europa League because I haven't needed to. So do you know more on this topic?
Yeah, so you need, in a squad of up to 25 players, you need to have at least 4 of them homegrown, as in from the nation that your club is registered with. So if we had, well, not if we had, but for example, Dan Ballard counts as homegrown from the nation because he was at, Arsenal's academy as a kid. So you need to have spent 3 consecutive years between the ages of, I think it's 15 to 21, I think, off the top of my head. But you need to have had 3 uninterrupted years registered with a club in that nation while you're young, basically, and then you count as homegrown, and you need at least 4 of them. But you also need 4 who are homegrown from your club. So, for example, a Chris Rigg, a Dan Neil if he was still here, and Anthony Patterson, somebody who's spent that period of time not just registered in your country, but at your club. With all that being said, that means in theory out of a squad of 25, subtract 8 places for your 4 from your club and 4 from your country, so you can have 17 foreign players, in theory. Now, that doesn't take into account players who are still under 21. So if a player's under 21 and also has been at your club for a few years, then they don't have to be registered in the squad. So again, Chris Rigg, if we registered him, he'd fill up one of our homegrown spots for the club, but also we don't even need to register him because he's still so young. We can just play him and he doesn't have to be named in the squad, so he doesn't have to take up a space. So look, it'll obviously depend on, who else comes in and goes between now and the end of the summer as to what those exact numbers are looking like in the squad of how many we would even want to actually register who are over the age of 21 and what have you. But long story short, you can name a smaller squad if you want. So instead of having to actually name players who fulfill those homegrown rules, you can kind of just leave a space in the squad and be like, well, if we'd picked another player, it would be one of these ones kind of thing. And then you can rely on your academy and the young players who are still at the club who don't need registering. They can be used to then fill out the squad on match days because obviously you've got an extended bench for European games. You've got more. Is it 9 or 12? I think it might be 12. Anyway, even though we've got a lot of squad spaces to fill, it doesn't actually necessarily mean that we need to be naming those players in our named Europa League squad. So that it's up to 25 players, but it can be less. It can be fewer players than that. We don't actually need to name all of our homegrown players. We can just leave space for them and we can rely on the academy. So I would expect to see plenty of the likes of, the lads who've been playing in pre-season, right? If they haven't gone out on loan, I'd expect to be seeing, Jensen Jones, and if someone like Finn Garagusian, if he's still here, or, whoever it is that the club look at the age group squads and pick out and think that they're the ones who are pushing on, I would imagine that we'll still have quite a typically small Regis Lebris style proper senior squad, and then we'll be seeing a lot of the academy lads drafted into, not necessarily make up the numbers, but certainly to fill out the squad, which in itself I think is a bit of a blessing, really, because it gives us a natural excuse to give some of these lads a bit of football and some minutes on the pitch. Because if we've got, let's say we've got a sort of a core group of 17, 18 players like Lebris usually likes to rely on through the course of a season, obviously they'll be the main players, but then around that there's plenty of scope in a competition where you've got a big bench, and as with everywhere else now, you can use 5 subs during a game. There's plenty of opportunity to get people rotated in and take some of the pressure off the senior lads to have to get through so many minutes. And particularly, like Bomber said, if we get a few of those games where realistically we should be battering teams, that's an even better proving ground. It's a great opportunity for us to be able to expand that pathway for the young lads, I think.
Well, if you followed all of that, congratulations. I'm going to admit that halfway through, I did have the monkey on a unicycle smashing the symbol together in my head and didn't quite follow all of it. But I will assume that all of that was right, Johnny, and everyone now is in the know about all of that.
Halfway through is longer than you normally get when I start going off on one rambling away. So I'll take that as a compliment, mate.
I was thinking what's for tea tonight and stuff like that, but I have to admit, I didn't. But anyway, Bomber, we'll move on to the transfer window because I'm going to put the next 2 questions to you both one at a time, because Rob Lowe asks first. He says, with everyone currently losing their transfer minds, which player would make, I assume he said, he doesn't say, but I'm assuming he's saying which player leaving would make you lose your head. And if you could pick the transfer to replace that person, who would it have been? Now, I suppose in some ways we've gone through the worst case scenario with the rumours around Xhaka. So I'm not sure basically there's anyone else who could have topped that in terms of rumours to leave the club.
No, I think when we did our season roundup and we'd made those predictions, Chris, couple of months back,
Yeah.
we were on the pod making the predictions, and I predicted that I didn't think Noah Siddiqui was going to be at the club anymore. He would have been one, and I still think he is one. I think for the maybe not for the immediate season, but for the longer term future of Sunderland, I would have been more disappointed losing him than Xhaka, let's say. But you're right, the prospect of losing I guess the heart of what we've achieved in this previous season just gone, was quite disastrous. So now that we've gotten over that wave of anxiety, I kind of am like, okay, well, whatever else will be now. I still think there's scope for us to lose one. I still think if we do lose another one, it will be Siddiqui, and it will be one of those like last couple of days of the transfer window. I think there's conversations that have probably been happening with the likes of Man United, with Chelsea and the likes. We've, as we have been doing, done all our business under the radar. And I think we've probably got a figure. United and Chelsea are going, actually, no. But then as they get more and more desperate and the window comes closer and closer to slamming shut, it wouldn't surprise me.
There's a line for the cliches.
Yeah, there you go. Add that to the list.
If anyone's got House out there, well done.
Add that to the list. But as we get closer to that window closing, they'll get more desperate and they're more likely to throw more money at it. So there's still a part of me that thinks we might lose Siddiqui, but there's nobody else. And I think this is the way that we've been moulded now as Sunderland fans. There's nobody else apart from Xhaka. There's nobody else that if we lost, I would be absolutely devastated to the point where I think our prospects for the season are done and dusted. So it's a really difficult question for me to answer. Like, I'd be gutted if we lost Roofs, or we lost Diarra, or we lost Robbie, or we lost one of those key figures from last season. I'd be disappointed, but part of me would be also excited to see who comes next, because our track record of the last 12, 18 months has been fantastic. So I'm kind of copping out of answering it. One, because I can't think of players to come in. But like I said, I don't really feel that there's apart from Xhaka, but that's, like I said, that's done and dusted. I don't feel like there's a catastrophic sale that could possibly happen that would derail us. So yeah, I mean, throw it over to Johnny if he thinks differently, but I'm struggling to answer it because, well, for that reason.
Well, I am just going to throw the next question to Johnny, because it is kind of linked, because Rob Lowe started his question by saying that. He said, with everyone currently losing their transfer minds, Jason Beattie asks, when was the last time we felt so comfortable in a transfer window? Or is it just the first time? So it's clearly showing the duality of what people are feeling and what people are spouting in this transfer window. Some people are just really laid back about it. Some people are getting concerned. So yeah, Jason Beattie said, when was the last time we felt so comfortable in a transfer window? Or is this just the first time? He said it's a bit mad because it will be our second season back in the Premier League and our first season in Europe for decades. But there is this dual feeling going on at the moment, Johnny. There's a lot of people out there panicking that we haven't brought the players in yet. And there's a lot of people quite laid back and looking at last season with the late deals we made last season that made an impact. Robbie Traore, those sort of deals which will happen pretty much on deadline day, if I remember rightly. So yeah, there's kind of two trenches, isn't it? There's two kind of camps at the moment with how they're feeling about the transfer window.
Yeah, there is, and I'm very firmly in the relaxed camp. You know, if I was any more laid back about this window, I'd be horizontal. I kind of summon even one iota of worry or concern when we've seen just how good this recruitment team is. We've got all the evidence. Look at last summer, look at January, look at the season before that, look at the squad we've built and what they've done as a club over the past, certainly 2 or 3 seasons, if not a couple more if you're including, dragging us out of League One. So there's absolutely no reason to be worried, I don't think. You look at last summer and we had to be so active. We had to bring that many players in because we had to bridge the gap between the Championship and the Premier League. And that's just not the situation we're in this year. We don't need to do the things that we did because we have those players now. We have the players we signed last summer. We have Granit Xhaka, we have Noah Siddiqui, we have, Alderete, Michele, etc., etc., etc. That's an extremely strong base on which to build. So I imagine that we will be signing people between now and the end of the window. But even if we didn't sign a soul, I think I'd still be like, well, it's not ideal, but this is a bloody good team, and we know that they are. And I would have no. I'd have a worry or two, but I'd have no reservations about like the season as a whole. I wouldn't be sat there thinking, oh God, we're in trouble here. What we're going to do? We need to panic in January or whatever. So I'm totally relaxed. And if you're trying to go back to the last time that we were, never mind as relaxed as this, even just the last time we were relaxed over a transfer window at all, I think you're looking easily at least a decade. I mean, more than that. Probably, maybe the 2010-11 season, when we brought in, we had Welbeck and Jean and Montari for a while and Henderson and, all those lads. That I always think back to that 3-0 against Chelsea as the crown jewel game of that team. So you think of that team and that was a pretty stress-free time when we were building that team because you see these players coming in and you're just like, yeah, these are all good footballers, and we weren't building from a position of panic. But basically since then onwards, we dismantled that team the following summer, and then we've just chased our tails ever since until this lot came in and finally started putting it right. So I think it's understandable that people are worried because we're not used to this. We don't know how to behave when you just trust the club that whatever they do, it's going to work. But as Bomber said, there's not really anyone in the team other than Xhaka. And I think you could maybe argue Brobby purely because of how difficult he would be to replace, being a striker in the most expensive position on the pitch and that. If anyone else leaves, I'd think, A, if the club have sanctioned it, then the deal to them must be worth it. So not worried about that. And B, they must think they've got targets in mind they can bring in to replace. And they've been brilliant on that score as well. So I just don't see where the room for worry to come into the picture even is. But as I say, I understand why people feel that way because you can't help but compare, can you, to the other teams in the league and they're all getting the new shiny toys and we're not. But I don't think it's a problem.
I don't think it's as big as we think either. Obviously, we live in this Sunderland bubble, so we're interested in who's coming in and who's going out of Sunderland Football Club. But as you've been speaking then, Johnny, I've just been on Transfermarkt and gone down the list of transfers that have happened so far for this 26-27 season. And if you take out like Chelsea, Man City, who every single season throw endless amounts of cash at and endless numbers of players, you look at the like our peers, if you like, in terms of the people the teams that we're competing with. Currently, Bournemouth, they've signed a centre forward for 10 million and a right back for 20 million euros. This is, I've got it in euros. So they've signed 2 players. They've signed a right back and a forward who look like they're prospects. They're both 21 and for relatively small fees. I go down this list. Coventry have spent 18 million on two players. Crystal Palace have spent 18 million euros on a right back, and that's it up to this point. Everton have signed 2 players for less than 20 million pounds. Fulham have only spent 3 million on an 18-year-old centre forward. So it's not just us. So if people are panicking because they feel that we're being left behind by not strengthening, the teams, again, forget about the so-say top 4, the Chelsea, Arsenal, Man City, Liverpool, because they'll spend regardless. But everyone below that has either not properly started building yet, or have literally bought one or two players in for not phenomenal amounts of money. So if we're talking about potentially breaking our transfer record again, none of our direct competitors have done that so far. I think the most that the team spent is 20 odd million on someone.
The only exception, sorry to interrupt, but the only exception is Spurs as well. And we all know that Spurs are in a totally unique position because of their stadium and the ridiculous amount of commercial revenue that they bring in. And they've been stinking for 2 seasons, so they were desperate.
The other thing I'll chuck into there, just on the managerial stability, is how many teams with new managers are starting from scratch.
Yeah. So again, when we were talking about length of service with managers a little bit earlier, again, I had a little look, and there's 11 of the 20 managers that have been in the job for less than 365 days, which just goes to show. So there's 11 of those 20 managers that haven't had a summer transfer window necessarily to put their mark on their teams. So yeah, I think just to come full circle, I'm not worried. Like other teams in and around us haven't really started yet. We need also to add in the context that it's a World Cup year, so a lot of the players that we might be targeting, they've only just come back from America, because the likelihood is they'll be in and around the national teams, because that's the level of player that we're in the market that we're fishing in now. So yeah, not worried at all.
Well, we did have your predictions, as you said, back on the predictions podcast, Bomber. And if anyone wants to listen to Andrew and Bomber give their predictions way before anything started, then go back and listen to that. But Johnny, we've got a similar question in from SAFC Yes and Rob Elson Davison, who essentially asks, what positions need strengthening between now and the end of the window? And there's an addition from Rob Elson Davison who says, is it critical that we get these in ASAP with just over 3 weeks until the first game to try and hit the ground running?
So I'll answer the last bit first. No, I don't think it matters whatsoever. I think there was, again, like, not to be a broken record, but last summer there was a massive, justification for going early for a lot of them. And even then, by the way, some of the most important signings we made last summer came later than where we are now in the year. They came in August, so Nordi Mukele, I think Alderete didn't come in until August. Brian Brobby didn't come in until deadline day, after we'd already signed and then got rid of Mark Gue. So the timing during the window of when somebody comes in, it's not completely irrelevant, but it's not a sort of deciding factor in whether someone's going to succeed or fail. The quality of the player is the most important thing, and whether they're the right fit. I would far rather us wait an extra fortnight and sign a better player than go a fortnight early and get someone who's not quite as good. We've got to think about more than just the first month of the season when we're planning these moves, and the club obviously will be doing that. But yeah, I don't think the timing's a huge difference maker. Also because, again, like, as I say, we're already quite good. If we just with the players we've already got, presuming nobody gets injured between now and the opening day, we could start with Roofs, Hume, Mukele, Ballard, Ronaldo, Xhaka, Siddiqui, Diarra, Talby, Enzo, Brobby. Just to lash 111 out off the top of my head. That's already an unbelievably good team, right? So we don't need to be panicking about the first day of the season. However, the first part of the question is more interesting, actually, is where we want to strengthen, because I've actually changed my mind on this a little bit since the start of the summer. I was pretty adamant that right wing was the number one priority position that we had to strengthen in. And I do still think we need one. But I've started coming around to think that maybe it's less about bringing in specifically a right winger, like a marquee player who can be the undisputed number one starter. It might be more prudent to go with someone who can fill in on the right, fill in through the middle, a little bit more versatile maybe, because I think we've got pressing concerns in the middle of the pitch where, yes, we've got Granit, Enzo and Noah, but then behind those, there's not really much. I know obviously Riggy's going to have a bigger part to play this season and Enzo Lafayette are in there, but to get the best out of them, I think you want them further up the pitch. Particularly Enzo needs to be playing off the centre forward, because we saw the very best of him towards the end of last season when that was where he was playing and striking up a lovely relationship with Brobby. And even Isidore off the bench later on in games, he set that goal up against Villa, didn't he? So I think we need to strengthen in the middle of the park, particularly just with an eye on the amount of games. Xhaka is not going to be able to play 50-odd games this season.
Can I just throw in, because we've got a question, the next question for Neil from Spalding actually sent in by email. He's asking if Chris Rigg could develop into the next Granit Xhaka in that kind of holding role as he progresses and gets a bit stronger. But I'd argue with that. Whatever you say about Chris Rigg, I don't think Xhaka turned into this version of Xhaka until about 3 years ago.
Yeah, exactly. If we're asking a 19-year-old to turn into a seasoned, tactically astute, elite level sitting midfield player who can dictate the game, we'll be waiting a while. It's not going to be happening this season, I don't think. But I do think Rigg has got a much bigger role to play in the team this season. I just don't think it's the base of midfield. I think he'll be battling for a position slightly further up. So I think that Xhaka position, I already thought we needed to strengthen it in January. I think this summer it's a really big priority. And with that in mind, I don't know whether we're going to have the funds available to strengthen in attack as much as we would want. We're just going to be spread a little bit too thin. We need a left back. We've had all these links with Metali, the lad from Toulouse. If that goes through, that's supposed to be quite a canny wedge, isn't it? Like neck end of 30 million euros, possibly a little bit more. So, yeah, it might be a case of needs must. So I think central midfield, or particularly a Xhaka understudy stroke rotation option, right up there for me. Left
Just
back.
sign another Xhaka.
Yeah, exactly. Just sign another Xhaka because it's piss easy. Like you cannot move for Granit Xhakas in the transfer market. Like, centre midfield, left back, and then right wing and striker in an ideal world, but in the real world, possibly one that can, almost in a similar way to what Mayenda could do. Mayenda could play through the middle, or he could be pushed out wide. That's a viable role in the squad that we could fill. It just might be, at the short-term expense of another shiny new attacking signing. But, we've got to prioritise, haven't we? And I think midfield and defensive depth is going to be much more important for us than extra firepower. Not that I would say no to a nice 40 million quid centre forward.
Yeah. Well, Bummer, I think you're going to like this next one because I'm going to put, we've had 2 questions in on the same topic, and I think you'll enjoy this one, I think, because James Stevenson and Tenchi Lad have both sent in similar questions. I'll read James Stevenson's out first. He's asking, why is everyone writing us off, and why are they saying we're a candidate for relegation? He says, last season's performance has shown that we did not get battered and we were competitive. Only Arsenal, City, Brighton and Brighton conceded less, showing that we had defensive solidity and we were miles more attacking in the last 5 or 6 games of the season. Tenchi Lad says, why do other clubs, supporters and so-called pundits and experts assume that we will fall off a cliff this season and be hit by this fictional second season syndrome, which actually we did a podcast on it last week, I think it was. We've lost Kutrada and still 2 months from the transfer window closing. Is it foolish to suggest it? So yeah, there's a lot of this going around, isn't there, Bomber? And I'm sure Gav and Craig put out on the socials the other day somebody writing us off already. I think I can't remember. It might have been a championship podcast. I can't remember who it was. Barnsley fan, maybe. Can't remember. But yeah, already people saying that we're going to get relegated. Don't seem to have learned the lessons from last season, have they?
No, they don't, do they? And if it's if it's a championship media outlet that are suggesting that we might struggle, they might want to stick to commenting on the championship and not the Premier League. But I think it's just because we're an easy target. Because I think I think back to like Leicester, and I know we didn't win the Premier League, but against all odds, Leicester won the Premier League, and against all odds, all right, maybe not 5,000 to 1, partly because those sorts of odds don't exist anymore, thanks to Leicester. But against all odds, we not only didn't get relegated, we not only didn't just finish in the bottom half of the table, we finished in the top half of the table, and we finished in a European place. So, in modern day thinking, with the context that generally speaking, when a club goes up to the Premier League, they go back down the next season. We are a bit of a Leicester story in that respect. And I think people who aren't close to the club and aren't fans of the club and don't know just actually how far this club has come on and off the pitch, make us an easy target to all that, like you say, that fictional second season syndrome. There's nothing to suggest that we will be that, because we've got, by and large, the same players, the same quality. Other teams around us aren't strengthening exponentially and leaving us behind. So I just think it's a combination of them not knowing the club and, I guess, thinking about our recent history. Everybody knows our recent history. It's been documented. It's on Netflix. Anybody can go and look it up. Some people probably still consider us a Championship League One club for that reason, that we're massively overachieving and that we possibly overachieved in getting back into the Premier League in the first place, and they're just waiting for that bubble to burst. There's probably a few media outlets who are fans of clubs who are perhaps a little bit jealous of what we've achieved last season. And there's also probably a few who are commenting because they like to be the contrarian. And if something does drastically happen and we do struggle this season coming, they can turn around and say, I told you so. I was the one who predicted that Sunderland would struggle this season. So I think there's a mixture of all three, but it can all be bracketed into the naivety and just not knowing the club. I think we're an easy target, as are all the promoted clubs will be this season. But yeah, I mean, pay no mind. Like I said, if you're getting comments from a media outlet that are specialising in the Championship, I wouldn't pay it no mind. I'm sure even Alan Shearer would struggle to tip us to struggle and get relegated this season.
Might have a go. But for all of you out there who, of course, listen to our Second Season Syndrome podcast, and I'm looking at Johnny and Bomber's face now to see if they did listen back to it, that we did go through, I did some stats on the back of a fag packet. Do you two want to have a guess at the percentage of clubs that do go down in the second season after getting promoted?
Yeah, I do actually know, because we were talking about it in the WhatsApp group the other day. I didn't listen to the episode. I'll hold my hands up, guilty as charged. I've not got round to it yet, but Onyx, you'd have been preaching to the choir, because I'm already converted.
I'll give it a guess. What? So are we talking recent history? Or are we talking in Premier League history?
Premier League history.
Premier League history. I think it was probably more prevalent early on. I can't think of too many occasions where it's happened recently, because the teams that have that stayed up, your Nottingham Forests, etc., have then stayed. I would say, I'm going to sit on a fence and say it was more prevalent in the early days, not so prevalent now. So I'll say it's about 50%.
About 50%.
It's much less than that, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's hovering around 13%, is it?
Well, possibly. I when I did it on the back of a fag packet, I got 11%.
Oh, wow.
That go down. And the average...
I'll take a couple of percent.
I'll give you that. Like I said, I might have missed a few when I went through, because I had Middlesbrough back in 95, 97, Bradford 99, 01, Ipswich 02, West Brom 06, Reading 08, Hull 10, Birmingham 11, QPR 13, Hull 2015, Huddersfield 2019, and Sheffield United 2021. And the average time that a promoted club remains in the Premier League is 3 to 4 seasons before being relegated.
Just one tiny addition as well that's relevant to us. I think out of the past decade, there were 4 that went down in the second season. And of those 4, 3 of them had finished either 17th or 16th in that first season that then went down. So it doesn't take much to drop from just outside to in the relegation zone. Not too many going 7th to the relegation zone.
Well, the only anomaly there was the Sheffield United one, but they finished high.
And they scraped 9th, didn't they?
And the second season was the COVID season, where they relied a lot on Bramall Lane, of course, and they didn't have it.
And really, actually, that season they shouldn't have gone down anyway. It was only a goal line technology cock-up that sent them down, wasn't it, in the end?
So basically what we're saying, we've poo-pooed the second season syndrome once again. But right, moving on to next season, we've got a few left. I can't remember who I'm going to come to on this one, so I'm going to go to Johnny on this one. Objectives. Paul Rackstraw's asking. He says, what do you think the objectives are for the leadership team for this season? He says, I think they've persuaded Xhaka to stay by saying they are aiming for a trophy, whether that be Domestic Cup or Europa League. I also think we will get at least 2 or 3 wow signings, which maybe is another promise to Xhaka. But objectives, I mean, I don't think this club's looking to rush anything, as I said earlier. I think it's all about consolidation, and yes, they've got ambition, like Gasolfi said, Champions League and all this sort of stuff. But it's not going to be alarm bells if that's not the case, is it?
No, there's a difference between actual objectives, as in these are the things that we're trying to achieve this season concretely, versus the aspirations of the club. Because I think the mental bastards behind the scene actually are targeting Champions League this season, because they're just that without fear and without limits, unlike us. And so I think Gasolfi was being 100% honest when he said that he was slightly disappointed we didn't get it last season, because to them they'll have gone, well, there's not that many points difference we'd have needed to make up, so why not? Whereas we're all, cowering in fear of even being in Europe at all, like, oh my God, don't know how to deal with this. So yeah, I think behind the scenes they'll secretly be thinking there's no reason we couldn't win a trophy or 2 and try and squeeze in the top 5, because they're crazy. But the actual, legitimate objectives of the season, I would imagine that, I think, I forgot the name of the person who asked the question, but they were saying they might have promised a trophy, or at least they aim to try and get a trophy. I think that's probably on the cards, whether that's the Europa League, whether that's the FA Cup. It'll depend how the season pans out, of course, but I imagine that they have said behind the scenes, we'd like a proper go at one of them. Because I think that Port Vale result last season will have stung, because that was a massive opportunity that we let slip there. And okay, you can forgive it because it was our first season and we ended up doing what we did, but I think this time around, there's a little bit less of a safety net there. We're not newly promoted now. We're a bit more of a known quantity. So, yeah, I'd expect them to take, at the very least, one of those 2 cups seriously. And beyond that, I think they'll probably be saying top half again would be a realistic league objective. Again, obviously, it's going to depend how the cups go. Because if suddenly we find ourselves in the semis of the Europa League and the league, we're safe from relegation, but, you can start to go, well, maybe if we just prioritise the semis of the European competition, we'd be all right to let the league position slip. So it'll be fluid, but I'd imagine they'll be saying to Reggie at the start of the season, look, we want somewhere in the region of top half, a good cup run, and just general development of the younger players. I would suspect they want to see Chris Rigg getting a bit more involved. They want to see, Noah Siddiqui kicking on. They want to see Habib Diarra start to prove his worth. Those kind of things will be things that they'll be trying to measure, I would imagine.
So just to put that league position into golfing terminology, 10th is par.
10th is par, I reckon.
Would that be fair?
10th is par. Top 7 again is a birdie. Top 5's an eagle. Win the league's an albatross.
There you go. Perfect. I just needed this. Get you going on that one. Right. So that was from Paul Rackstraw, in case I missed that. Next one, James Stevenson. Just about the start of the season, Bomber, he says, with all the managerial changes, including the visitors, I think he said 9 new managers, not including promoted sides. How key is a winning start to the season? Is it a real opportunity to stamp down and say we are settled and last season was not a fluke? And he's asking also, is another European finish possible? But with the success of last season and with, on paper, Ipswich and Fulham at the start of the season, how important is it that we hit the ground running, or do you think all will be calm if we have 1 point from the first 6 or something?
I think it's important in any season. We were sat here this time last year saying it's important that we get a good start to the season so we can get some points on the board, settle the nerves early. There's nothing worse for a newly promoted team than waiting until October to get your first victory. All of those sorts of things. They still apply. They apply to any team. They apply to Man City. They apply to Arsenal, just for different reasons. So if the question is, how important is it that we get off to a good start? Yeah, it absolutely is. It's it how you go about your first 6 games of the season sets the tone for the rest of that season. Like, and last year is just the proof that you need for that. We got off to an absolute flyer for those first 6, 7, 8 games, and lo and behold, we're in the run-in in the last 4 games of the season, wondering whether we're going to qualify for Europe. So to answer the question, it is crucially important, but I'd be saying that regardless of how many managers have changed, how many teams have changed their managers, how many teams have made XYZ signings or not made XYZ signings. So is it important? Yeah, it's crucial. The other side of that is that we have a very good opportunity to make a good start of the season because of the way that the fixtures have run out. I think opening day is going to be a lot tougher than we think. You only have to look at what happened to us as a newly promoted team playing at home opening day of the season. I know West Ham were pretty shite, but nonetheless, they were an established Premier League.
I'm not sure any side would have beaten us with the atmosphere.
Exactly. But that's the point I'm trying to make, Chris. Like going down to Portland Road of a team that's back in the Premier League, on paper, people will be looking at that and going, well, we should start the season with 3 points. That is nowhere near guaranteed. But that said, as a team, we just constantly upset apple carts and defy odds. So yeah, it on paper, it is a good, kind set of fixtures, I guess. Those first 6 or 7 games where we could possibly look at getting ahead of ourselves or not ahead of ourselves, ahead of where we would anticipate or where, a points total that we think is acceptable. But yeah, it is important. The question was, is it important? And yeah, it is. And I'd be saying that regardless of, like I say, who's gone in as manager or whatever club and who's signed whatever player. So yeah, it's crucial.
Absolutely right. We've got one more last one on the football, and I'm going to answer this very quickly because Steve Richards asks, has there ever been a better time to be a red and white? And can we raise the bar even higher? I'll answer that very quickly, that it was great in the Reedy days, but not in my lifetime has there been a better time to be a red and white, because we didn't have Elvis involved back then, of course. And can we raise the bar even higher? Yes, because in Johnny's terminology, Gasolfi's aiming for an albatross this season. So I think I've answered that question there. Couple of kind of non-footballish questions to finish us off very quickly. Johnny, Mike Sue asks, who makes the all-time list of Mr. Nice Guys in Sunderland's history? So he says, who are the best son-in-laws? Can we add anyone to the list other than Luke O'Nien? Is anyone going to beat Luke O'Nien at the top of that list?
Obviously, Luke O'Nien's top of the list, but do you know what? Who gives me nice to have around the place energy? Trey Hume.
Trey Hume. Because actually, I was going to say Wilson Isidore looks like a.
Oh yeah, he'd be a delight as well. But he's also mad as a box of frogs, so I feel like he could be quite hit or miss. But don't know, something about Hume. He just seems like the type of lad where, as soon as you get him around, your parents or whatever, he's as good as gold. He's so polite, that young lad. And then you stick him on a pitch and he's sending Morgan Rogers up a height and, getting called a thug or whatever. I feel like he's got that duality of man about him.
Yeah. Bummer, anything to add to that, Mr. Nice Guys?
I don't think you can see past. To be fair, when you were posing the question to Johnny, the first person that came into my mind was Trey Hume. And I'm not genuinely not just saying that. But you can't look past Luke O'Nien. There'll probably be players that have been and gone in the past that probably could live up to that, but they still wouldn't hold a candle to O'Nien, I don't think.
Yeah. And I think actually the wider point, I think, actually, with Mike Sue's question about all-time list of Mr. Nice Guys, this has got to be one of the nicest squads in terms of, be it like you liking the people that play for the club, which doesn't actually come around too often. Very last one, because I had to finish on this one, because Sean Cottle on X sent us a message. He says we need to choose between the Nashville hot chicken and the Philly cheesesteak, and he added 2 very sexy pictures of the 2 different types of food, which I stared at for far too long. That wasn't healthy. How long I stared at these and wished I had a Philly cheesesteak in my hand. So go on then, gentlemen. Nashville hot chicken or Philly cheesesteak?
Give me some hot chicken all day.
Nah, I'm a red meat fiend, so cheesesteak all the way for me.
I mean, it's tough. It is tough.
It is. Don't get me wrong. Give me both, and I'll eat both. But
at the same time, in one mouthful. Don't worry about it.
So yeah, if I had to choose one or the other, give me the fried chicken or the hot chicken any day.
Yeah, and you wouldn't care how big the portions were over there. You'd have a go at eating both, wouldn't you?
Oh yeah,
and the sides that come with both of them.
Yeah, it's like asking who do you want to start at centre half. Dan Ballard or Omar Alderete. The two amazing options. Why do we have to just enjoy them, man?
Yes, but yeah, I'd have to if I had to pick one, I'd go for the Philly cheesesteak. But fantastic things, and I am worried that was the most excited I got on the whole podcast when I got into the question. But anyway. We need to leave it for today because we've gone on for long enough as usual, but I just need to say thank you very much to Bomber and Johnny as always, because they were there with all of the questions and they were absolutely fantastic as usual. And we need to say thanks again to everyone for listening, and thank you as well for your questions. Once again, they're absolutely brilliant and we always appreciate them. So thank you very much for those. We will be back tomorrow as usual, but to be honest, right now I'm forgetting what day it is, so I can't remember what that will be. But it's Haway the podcast, so I can only guarantee there will be a pod tomorrow. So please look out for that, whatever that might be. But from us, it's bye for now.